What's up, guys? It's Will from Duelists, bringing you guys a new, different discussion video discussing three very popular trap cards right now and whether they should be main decked in your deck. And the way we went about basically doing about this is we polled various members from Zodiac Duelists. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that group, but essentially it's a group of duelists whom I would characterize as probably your maybe intermediate to meta players, to where I would say they're probably the most credible source to poll when it comes to opinions on cards. So we basically posted a poll on their Facebook page, and they about three particular cards, and they gave us their opinions and whether or not the cards were main deck worthy. So, before I go into the three cards, just want to say that I don't think there's any absolutes in Yu-Gi-Oh. In other words, there are a lot of individuals who go around saying, if you don't main deck three Ash Blossom, you suck, or if you don't main deck, three Pot of Desires, you suck. If you think Pot of Desires is a bad card, you suck. No, these are just suggestions, and these are just opinions and players. I've always been one to believe that you don't have to believe the mass consensus when it comes to an opinion on a card. I think that once anybody's been dueling long enough, they can evaluate the efficacy of a card and whether it even fits their deck or not. So I just wanted to say that before starting, because sometimes people think, oh, you should be playing these cards. Not necessarily. So, all right. So the first card that we want to talk about is Infinite Impermanence. It just recently came out. Basically, the effect states, target one face-up monster your opponent controls. It has its effects negated until the end of this turn. Then, if this card was activated while it was set, negate the effects of spells and traps in this card's column this turn. If you control no cards, you can activate this card from your hand. So, why is this card super popular right now and ranging into the $90 range? Because it's basically a better effect veiler that you can also use situationally for other things. So, Effect Veiler, I never liked Effect Veiler as a card. Well, okay, I thought Effect Veiler got power crept immediately. As soon as Ghost Ogre came out, as soon as Ash Blossom came out, I thought Effect Veiler is just like garbage. I was like, no, don't run Effect Veiler. I would run Ghost Ogre. I would run Ash Blossom. I would run Droll and Lock before I even ran Effect Veiler. I really would. When it came to Infinite Impermanence, though, I will say that this card is a huge upgrade over Effect Veiler, because the one thing I never liked about Effect Veiler is you can only use it during your opponent's turn, whereas this one you can technically use it during your turn and during your opponent's turn, because assuming you go second and your opponent goes first, you can activate it from your hand. It's an Effect Veiler. And assuming you go first, even if you draw it, you can at least set it and then Effect Veiler your opponent during their turn using its effect, or negate a spell and trap in the same column. Now, granted, a lot of at least players are more conscious of cards like these that negate stuff in the same column, to where they don't they don't activate stuff in the same column. But occasionally you can use that to your advantage and put things to, or manipulate things to where they have to, or sometimes they're just they are simply what's the word I'm looking for? Careless. To where they activate something in the same column as this and you negate it. So the fact that it has Effect Veiler during either opponent's turn, which I like, plus the fact that you can negate spells and traps with it, particularly makes me like the card. I don't think Infinite Impermanence is a bad card at all. Most people don't like running trap cards in the main deck nowadays, simply because why? Because trap cards are slow. But the thing that makes this card, kind of worth it is that it can be activated from the hand. I think that most trap cards that can be activated from the hand are what people are kind of trending toward, because you don't have to wait a turn to activate them. And so what you really want to ask, whether you want to main deck this card, is do you feel like, one, your deck has the ability to be able to put this in without screwing up its own agenda? Because this card obviously is not going to have any engine, facilitate any engine, except for maybe like Altergeist or Goki or something like that, because you can set it, or Mech Knight, I meant to say, because you can set this and then summon your Mech Knights. But other than that, it really won't facilitate your engine. So assuming you go first and you draw this card, it could make it to where you can't really go off. And that's what the hesitation for various, main deck cards is if I put Raigeki, if I put Evenly Matched, if I put Infinite Impermanence in my main deck, I could draw it going first, and that could make it to where that could have been a combo piece. That could have been, a Pot of Desires. That could have been a card that's going to help me set out my board. And that's where I think a lot of the players struggle in terms of what they decide to do when it comes to main decking or side decking a card. Some players believe in your deck should be completely full of engine-based cards to where, you have to win going first, because most people look at the statistics and say, well, most of the time if you don't win the dice roll, you don't win the match, so I might as well build my deck to go first because I have to build my deck toward winning the dice roll. And then some other players are just like, yeah, I'm going to build my deck to go first, but I'm at least going to allocate maybe 4 to 5 slots in the event that I don't win the dice roll, to where I can at least out my opponent's board. And so different decks are better and worse at doing that. For example, cards with 1-card engines like Invoked can probably run this card and be okay because a lot of their combos require only 1 card, and that really defines what makes you rogue, what makes you meta, and what makes you casual. So when we asked Zodiac Duelists whether they would be main decking or side decking this card, surprisingly, it was very, very split. The main deck was 74. The not main deck would be 73, so 50-50 roughly, but with a little bit more towards the main deck. And we made sure to ask if, assuming price was not an issue on this one, and a lot of people will say that yes, if they had the option, they would be main decking Infinite Impermanence. So pretty cool. I don't know if you guys agree with that. For me personally, Infinite Impermanence is a great card. I don't know if I main deck it though, but then again, like I said, a lot of my decks are they're not necessarily what you characterize as meta. They really need engine-based cards in their deck to where I really don't have a lot of spots to activate or allocate toward, defensive cards. But, so yeah, that was that. So the next card we're going to talk about is Evenly Matched. A card that I really like. So it's basically at the end of the battle phase, if your opponent controls more cards than you do, you can make your opponent banish cards from their field face down so they can control the same number of cards as you do. If you control no cards, you can activate this card from your hand. So another thing that advantage this card has is that you can activate it from your hand. You don't have to wait a turn. That battle phase clause confuses a lot of players initially, but no. If you're going second, you can go straight to your battle phase, go to the end of the battle phase, and activate this card. Why is this card so freaking good? Because basically, if your opponent overextends, it's basically a board breaker. It's basically a board breaker. Assuming you can get around a card or a monster or something like that, or a build, like basically think about the decks this screws over. So Sky Striker, aka Brandish, are going to be becoming very popular, and they have basically at the end phase that 1 card sets all their stuff back to where they can use it during your turn. You play this, they can only control 1, so they're probably just going to leave 1 on the board while you pretty much banish like 5 cards of theirs. Goki, another deck that this can really, really screw up. Toads, so basically Paleo, another deck that this card completely destroys. True Draco, this card, I don't know if True Draco is going to continue to be playing, probably not, but this card would also completely destroy True Draco, especially when they're running a Demise version. Like this card, if you look, and Altergeist, this also destroys Altergeist. If you look at all the decks that are touted to be meta, Evenly Matched completely it destroys them all. So why do people not like main decking this card? Well, it really depends on what deck you're playing. If you're playing a deck that doesn't really utilize back row, that's all completely monster base, and doesn't necessarily leave a lot on the board, you can run this card and be completely fine. I run this card in Blue Eyes. I like it in Blue Eyes. I can't tell you how many times this card has saved my ass. I can also tell you how many times this card has bricked my hand, because I went first and I had Evenly Matched. So that really comes down to whether you want to main deck the card or not. Me personally, I really like the card, but it doesn't fit in every deck. I will say that. I think if you're a Blue Eyes player, you can maybe consider running 1 or 2, but don't feel like that's assuming you don't have a lot of non-engine based cards in your deck. But if you're playing a lot of the meta, where you're probably already going to be having a lot of back row, or you're going to have a lot of monsters on the board that's not very easy to board wipe. Evenly matched might not be toward you. A lot of people really prefer to run this card going second instead in the side deck because it's automatically going to be live for you going second. You can already imagine that. So when we asked Zodiac Duelists, basically only 17% would elect to main deck it, whereas 83% would elect not to main deck it. For me, I love the card. Now, granted, I will say, yeah, some decks don't main deck it, and don't even, like, maybe possibly not even side deck it. Well, no, you should be siding 3 of these, for sure. Because, you know, it doesn't necessarily fit your engine. Like I say, if your deck's already running a lot of back row, probably not. If your deck is very, very monster-based with back row, probably not. But if your deck doesn't run a lot of back row, if you know it's pretty much monster-based and doesn't bring in a lot initially, I do like evenly matched. But like I said, a lot of people, you know, change their minds. I know that the card is very, very popular going second, which is mostly what it's utilized for. But yeah, so that's the thing. All right, so the final card we get to is Waking the Dragon, and basically says if this set card and its owner's control is sent to the graveyard or banished by your opponent's card effect, you can special summon one monster from your deck or extra deck, which is pretty good. This card was common in the newest set, which is pretty good. So basically, this card's gotten a lot of popularity now because some people were running it basically to get over True Draco or something like that, because True Draco would basically blind pop back row, and as a result, they'd summon Ultimate Falcon. There are various things you can summon off this thing. You can summon Ultimate Falcon, you can summon Quasar, Blazar, you can summon the Last Warrior from another planet. They're number 38. I mean, you can basically bring out anything that's advantageous for you when it comes to Waking the Dragon. So the only thing though is that it says if this set card in your owner's control is sent to the graveyard or banished by your opponent's card effect. So I honestly, you could probably have an entire discussion about this card. And it really, when I asked the question of whether people are going to be main decking or at least side decking it, I was honestly genuinely curious, because if I have a Twin Twister, if I have a Cosmic Cyclone, or if I had the ability to take out that trap card. Let's say I have a bunch of monsters on board, and I have the ability to take out that trap card, but it's really hard to stop the other effects because it activates banished, it activates in the graveyard, and stuff like that, to where I'm not even sure if you can solemn it. If somebody knows, please tell me. Can you solemn judgment this if it activates by banished? Because I know that dot, the parentheses means the activation, but I'm not even sure if you can solemn that. So basically, because it might be the effect, not the activation. I'm not sure. Basically, if anybody knows if you can solemn judgment or solemn warning this, let me know. But basically, when it comes to this card, what do I think about it? It's mind games. It's a super mind game deck. I wonder if players are actually going to change the way they duel because they know this card exists. Kind of like Mirror Force back in the day. Mirror Force would make players switch their monsters in defense mode. I'm actually curious to see if this will make players not take out back row and extend to attack. And then sometimes they might attack into that very Mirror Force. So what deck would this be very advantageous for? Mech Knight. I could see this being run in Mech Knight. I could see this being run in Paleo. Basically very back row heavy decks, because some players wouldn't mind Blind Twin Twister, or Blind MST, Blind Cosmic Cyclone against those decks, because you did want to take out those cards, that was for sure. But now you also have to think about Waking the Dragon. But what if those is a Waking of the Dragon? What if I activate this Twin Twister, and technically, yeah, I have game from here on if I get this through with this attack, but what if it ends up being Waking the Dragon, he summons Blazar against me or something like that? Which would be, or Ultimate Falcon. So, interesting card. It's a definitely mind games card, and I'm really curious into knowing if players would actually change their duel habits, knowing that this card exists, kind of like Mirror Force in the past. But we asked the Duelists. They said that only 12 were going to be main decking it. 62 which was 52% of our total poll, was actually considering side decking this card, which I thought was pretty crazy because I wasn't gonna main deck or side deck this card. I think it's a little bit too gimmicky. For me, I like guarantees rather than conditional cards. But yeah, 52% said they were going to side deck this card, and then 46, which was probably 38% said neither. So for me, I think the card is way too conditional. I've always been the duelist who I like when I'm guaranteed. I don't like having to depend on my opponent for plays. With the exception of Maxi, of course. But yeah, this card, it has a very, very high ceiling, but for me, I just don't like the card because it's not necessarily guaranteed. It's all dependent on your opponent. Unless there are ways in which you can actually trigger this card, but you'd have to make a gimmick deck out of that, whether it's like I'm actually trying to make a deck legitimate. So anyway, so those are 3 cards. Feel free to give your opinions and everything like that in the bottom, and we'll see you guys on the next discussion video, guys. Thanks.